Hi, hello, and welcome to our session regarding the GP service task framework in Greenplum. Myself, Nimish Avasekar, and I'm going to present the general overview of the Greenplum GP service framework, its general use cases, and what can we do with the framework and the utility that is provided with the Greenplum install with this particular framework, right? I'll get started with an overview of the GP service task framework, and then moving ahead, I'll also give a short demo on how to effectively use the GP service task to schedule jobs, or schedule some maintenance or regular maintenance activities with this kind of a framework. All right. What is the GP service task framework? Right, it's basically a utility or a tool which is basically used to schedule commonly used tasks within the Greenplum ecosystem. Right, for example, if you want to schedule uh, a general health check, or if you want to run a particular script periodically, or if you want to recover or attempt recovery on some of the segments that might have failed periodically, like do it automatically. Yeah, you can use the GP service task framework going forward. Now, this framework is primarily available with Greenplum 7. It is also available with Greenplum 6, but specifically like latter versions, starting Greenplum 7.5 onwards and Greenplum 6.30 onwards, this framework is available by default. Right. So what is the GP service framework? It is basically a hub agent model, which is deployed across all the Greenplum nodes. And what it does is it internally uses gRPC to communicate commands across the Greenplum nodes, it is basically kind of a hub agent model where you can orchestrate like all of these activities across the Greenplum cluster. Now you can configure whatever checks you need to do or whatever commands you need to schedule via a YAML-based configuration file. And the config for it, I'll come up with it like in the presentation and the demo as well. But then like you can pass a config file to configure like what needs to be scheduled using the GP service task framework, right? You can schedule tasks periodically, you can execute a random task with the framework, you can pause and resume tasks as per your requirements. And all of that can be done directly using the GP service command line utility. Right. So all of the execution that happens via the GP service task framework, all of this can be audited using log files, right? So all of this is tracked within the GP service log files, and you can check whether a task executed successfully or if it failed for some reason. All of this can be checked in with the log files that are available with the GP service task framework. We also have a way to apply some form of pre-hooks and post-hooks to the automation, right? So for example, before doing a particular maintenance activity, you want to check how many connections are there in the database. You can do a pre-hook to run a PS command to check the number of connections, right? And similarly, like post-hook, like if you want to send out an email notification after a maintenance activity completes, you can use the post-hook command to do the same. All right, so a general architectural overview of the GP service task framework. GP service, when you run the GP service command, it basically deploys a GP service hub primarily on the coordinator of your Greenplum cluster. Coordinator is your entry point to the Greenplum cluster, right? So GP Service Hub basically initiates itself on the coordinator, and then it also deploys GP Service agents on the segment host, right? So all of these agents and the hub are internally the gRPC services, which are used to coordinate commands and like dispatch and deploy commands across the agent services. So high level, this is what the architecture look like. But then all of this can be kind of configured with config files. If you want to select a different port on which the agent or the hubs need to run, all of that can be configured with the config file for the GP service task. We also have TLS support for network communication between the hub and agents, just in case if you want to set up TLS across the agent services. All right, so if we look at the GP service utility, right, like it's a command line utility that comes default installed with the latest Greenplum 7 and 6 versions. And it is used to initialize and manage the hub and agent services. Right, so GP service init will initialize the GP service services across the nodes. You can start, stop, check the status of the services with these commands. And then, like in case you want to unregister and delete these services, you can also use the delete command to do that. All right. Some of the other things that you can like set up is set up environment variables, etc. Like all these environment variables that are currently being used in your shell prompt, like are basically used to configure the Greenplum task. All right. What about the GP service task? So GP service task, the task is a subcommand within the GP service utility. So GP service task, you can basically set up a particular task to be run at a particular time. You can pause the task, you can resume the task, you can schedule. The schedule command basically adds the task to an existing list of tasks that are already running. And then status will obviously give you the status of all the tasks which are currently configured with the GP service task services. All right, so a general overview of what happens when like the GP service utility is used to coordinate a particular task across the Greenplum nodes. So whenever you have a utility which uses the gRPC hub agent, it will send a RPC call with a particular command to dispatch, across the agent servers, which are not only running on the coordinator, it's also running across all the segment nodes as well. So it basically then dispatches this RPC call to the segment gRPC agent server. The agent server receives the particular task and command, like RPC command. It basically then executes the command internally, like based on what it needs to do, based on what you've set it up to do. And then based on the return status, like it communicates with the hub again to send it the status of the task that it's executed on the segment server. Right, the server hub then basically gets the result and returns it back with specific RPC calls, depending on whether the task has completed successfully or if it failed for some reason. So this is a very general, like extremely common gRPC hub agent architecture, where the gRPC hub basically becomes like an entry point for all the gRPC specific calls. And the hub then dispatches those across the nodes for the gRPC agent to kind of act on those particular commands. All right, so What do we need to schedule the task? Using the GP service task framework, like you firstly need a YAML file where you configure a name for the task. It can be a unique identifier with alphanumeric, characters. Like you can schedule a name for the assign a name for the task that you're about to run. Next is the seek command, basically the command that will run internally. So it can be like a generic Linux command, maybe a PS command or a shell script that you want to execute over a period of time, or even maybe a Greenplum utility, right? Like for example, if you want to run a GP state utility, which checks the state of the segments periodically. Or if you want to run a recovery on the segments automatically every 2 hours or 2 days, you can also schedule that across the Greenplum cluster, right? So my take as a product manager for this utility is that you can schedule recovery of segments that we call it as auto recovery using the GP service task framework, which means that this task framework will basically be configured to schedule a task to automatically recover any green plum segments that have been marked down periodically, right? So as a DBA, you don't need to now go ahead and manually run the recovery every time a segment goes down. You can basically schedule a task to do the recovery automatically, every couple of hours or maybe at a certain point of time during the day. As I mentioned, you have a schedule as well. So the schedule configuration is basically a standard cron configuration that is used to schedule the particular task at a particular time of the day or a day of the week or a particular month, right? So the first asterisk represents the minutes, hours, day of the month, and then the last one represents the day of the week. So 0 to 6, but then if you want to specify Sundays, you can use 0 or 7, right? So you can basically configure like the scheduling exactly the way you would configure a cron job, right? So if you want to schedule a particular task every 15 minutes, then you would do a */15, which would mean that the task would run every 15 minutes. Um, so it's a pretty standard cron scheduler that we've incorporated in the task framework. This is to keep it in line with like the regular Linux cron job, right? Then we also have pre-hooks and post-hooks that you can configure to run prior to the task or post the task, right? So a pre-hook is basically a command that you would run before the task is run. And it can be like a generic check to see if there are any connections to the database or if there is maybe a backup that is running currently and you don't want to interfere the backup by running a recovery, for example, right? So if this command, the pre-hook command fails and it checks the exit status, if it's a non-zero value, that means it's failed, it will skip running the actual command and the post-hook command as well. So it's a good way to kind of like do some form of a pre-check on your actual command to see if there are any connections maybe or some other like essential check that you need to incorporate in your task. The log command error is basically a way to log the standard error output to the log files that are generated for the GP service task framework. They are usually stored within var log/gp7. There is a folder under var log which will be used to kind of like look at the log files. But then like you can switch it on or off based on your requirement. So if you want to log the command output, like for example, if you run gp state as a command, every 20 minutes, and you don't want to log the output in your log file, you can set it to false. Right. Similarly, if there is an error that's caught when running the command and you don't want to log it, you can set it to false. This is all based on your requirement. All right, a sample use case and probably the most well utilized way to use the GP service task framework would be to automate the GP recover sec command for Greenplum. Right? The GP recover sec command is used to recover any failed Greenplum segments. So if you want to automate it, you can basically create a YAML file with this particular sample configuration. This is just an example, but then you can tweak it as and when you require. But then you would have initially the name of your task. So it is an auto recover job. The command would be the actual GP recover sec command that you would use to track the segment recovery, right? For example, if you want to run the recovery or test the recovery every couple of hours, you can then schedule it accordingly. Here we are setting command outputs to true. That means any errors or any problems with the command will be logged as an error message. Also the command output, right? Like whatever output, the standard output that the utility generates, it will be logged into the GP service log file. Be careful when switching these on because if you're scheduling something very frequently, like every couple of minutes or every 10 minutes, the log files might grow up to a very big size depending on the command. The pre-hook is basically a check that we are running. So you're running the gp state -e command to see the status of the current segments, right? It will give you if there are any segments which are marked down or segments that need rebalance, the gp state -e command will show you the output. And then the post hook can be like a shell script, which basically, sends a notification out, maybe an email message to the DBA in your team that basically tells that the command has completed, or if it has failed for some reason, you can automate the shell script to do that. All right, this ends the presentation, and what I'll do is show a short demo on how to effectively configure the GP service task framework. And currently, what I've done is I'll run the GP service command and gives you all the help options currently. So if I do a GP service status, so you see that there is a hub and agent running on this particular node, which means that I have already configured the hub and agent. The way to do this is GP service init command. And with the init command, I'll have to pass so if I do with this, I'll just need to pass a host file, which tells me the path to all the segment hosts in your Greenplum environment. The current host from where you are running the command, it assumes it to be the coordinator. So the host file will only be the list of segment hosts for the Greenplum cluster, right? So it will then initiate and run the hub on the coordinator and then the agent services across the Greenplum environment. All right, there are other options here like TLS or no TLS. If you're using TLS, then the certificate, the server certificates, the key, etc. All of this can be configured. If you don't want to use the default hub port, you can also set it up accordingly with this particular string, etc., etc. Like you can change the agent port as well if you don't want to use the default 8000 port. So as I mentioned, like the current GP service is currently running, and what I plan to do is use the current config file that I have generated here to schedule an auto recovery job. So for example, if I look at this particular config file, I have basically configured a auto recovery job, which means there is a pre-hook. I'll check to see if there is a GP backup running on this cluster. If not, only then proceed to use the command and recover the segments, right? If this pre-hook command fails with a non-zero output, it will not proceed to run the command, right? So the command is pretty much a straightforward GP recover seg command, which will attempt an incremental recovery on the segments. I have scheduled it to run every 3 minutes. So as I mentioned, there is a cron scheduler here, like similar to cron, we have minutes, day, month, etc. Like all of these are basically standard cron timed scheduler. And then I have made sure that the command error and the command output is set to false. Okay, so now what we'll do is check to see if there are any current tasks that are scheduled. It shows up as 0, which means that there are no tasks scheduled at this stage. To use this config file, we basically use this command, and I'll specify the config file. So you're basically specifying the config file and asking it to schedule a particular task, right? So it gives you a general overview of what the task is looking like. If everything looks fine, we say a yes, and we have now scheduled the task successfully. So if I do a status, it basically tells you that the task has been scheduled. It has not been executed yet because it's scheduled every 3 minutes. So the next scheduled time is 3:18. So it will wait for the particular time to run your auto recovery. Now, currently in my cluster, there are no segments down, which means that I do not have any segments that need recovery, right? So the auto recover task will basically just validate whether any segments are down. And if there are no segments down, it will just skip the GP recover seg command. Okay, so if I want to now test the auto recovery, I'll basically go ahead and check whatever mirrors are running. I'll just end up stopping one of the mirrors. All right. I'll tell Greenplum to recognize that the mirror is now officially down. Okay, so now we will recognize that the segment has been marked down in the configuration correctly. Now, like we will check to see the status of the task, right? So it's still scheduled. We still have around a minute to go before the task scheduler runs the recovery. But as you can see, there is now a segment down in the configuration, which means next time, like when the task is triggered, like it will attempt a recovery on it. All right. All right. Now, there is also a detailed view here. It gives you some other like information like the pre-hook status, post-hook status, command PID status, etc. All of this, but you can skip it if needed. Like you can just use the general status tab to check what is the current schedule of your task. All right. Um, okay, so we are almost on time, and now we can check to see this if the segment has been recovered. automatically. There you go. So the segment which was earlier marked down has now been recovered by the task scheduler. It basically ran the gprecoversig command that we had scheduled, and it went and cleared up the down segments, right? So another thing we can do is another question would be, what happens if you want to schedule multiple tasks, right? So we basically edit the YAML file, or we supply another job here, which in addition to the auto recover job, we'll also run a gp state command, like just to validate the segment status, right? So if now I use this new file, so it recognizes that there is the auto recover command already scheduled. Now note that in this second file, I have now not put a pre-hook, right? So it recognizes that the pre-hook is missing. So it red flags it and says that this will be changed, right? And along with that, there will be a new task added where it's going to run a gp state command every 2 minutes. So if I proceed to say yes, sorry. So if I proceed to say yes, it will make the change. Now, if I do a GP service task status, it will show these two tasks scheduled with the appropriate time scheduler, right? So this is one of the ways you can like add tasks to your scheduler. Other help items are you can pause a particular task, like for example, by passing the name of the job, you can pause it based on your requirement, right? So it will tell you that the task has been paused successfully. There you go, right? What else? Like you can resume the task once you've done clearing it up. Execute is basically used to execute a particular task immediately at that point of time, right? Like you don't want to schedule it at a particular time, but you want to run it immediately, you can do that. Um Another question would be like, how would you go ahead and remove a particular task? So currently, the way to do it is edit the YAML file to remove your particular job. So if I want to remove the validate segment job, I can just remove it from the particular YAML file and then rerun the schedule again, right? So it now detects that the previous job has been cleared out, it has been deleted. If I say a yes, it will make the changes. And now if I see the status, there's only one job running. So that's one way to clear it out. All right, so that concludes our demo. Along with like generic Greenplum commands, you can also schedule shell scripts. You can create your own particular workflows within the shell scripts and schedule them like at a particular point of time using the task framework. You can apply pre-hooks or post-hooks based on your requirements. So all of that can be configured with the task scheduler. All right, that concludes our demo and presentation to the GP service task utility. Hopefully you folks will use it like with Greenplum. If there are any requirements, we are definitely open to your feedback from you guys. And hopefully this will help you use the task framework more efficiently. Thank you very much.